And it's just, that's the type of stuff that gets me out of bed every morning and allows me to sacrifice my time with my family, my friends, for the good of all the people, not just the good of the political insiders. And I'm just sick and tired of what's going on, and I want real change in the town of Hempstead.
What does it really take to run for local office? On The Candidate, we're pulling back the curtain on the messy, expensive, and sometimes bizarre world of local politics. Join us as we share the unfiltered truth about what happens before you see those campaign signs pop up in your neighborhood. We're following serial entrepreneur Dave Kirpin as he dives headfirst into the world of local politics. Ready for a change in the world? This is your opportunity to be the candidate.
So running for office can be a very lonely thing. And that's why I'm so excited about today's episode, because today I'm going to welcome to the candidate another candidate who is running for the same position I am on the town right next to me. You know, I talk about how North Hempstead is the 5th largest town in the country. Well, the 1st largest town in the country is our neighbor, Hempstead. And with me today is Joe Scianablo, the candidate for Town Supervisor in the town of Hempstead. Joe has an incredible background as a Marine in Iraq, an NYPD cop, a prosecutor. His most important job, I think, is my most important job as well as a dad. Joe, welcome to the candidate.
I appreciate you having me here today, Dave, and thank you so much for providing this platform for us both to speak about what it's like to be a candidate running for some of the largest townships in our country.
Yeah. So I hadn't planned on this question, but my first question, having done that intro now, is perhaps a strange one. But one of the things that I'm super frustrated about in this has nothing to do with the actual content of the race. It's the fact that nobody knows what the heck a town supervisor is. And whenever I tell my friends, family members, people all over the country, they're like, "Wait, what is that? Like, are you the mayor?" I'm like, "No, actually, we're actually above the mayors," but nobody would know. Like, what? Have you had that same as somebody else running for a town supervisor position? Have you had that same challenge?
So it comes up quite often, and I think one of the ways that I've been answering it is just explaining the size and scope of what the leader or the executive of the township actually entails, which is the largest township in the country for the town of Hempstead, for you, the 5th largest township in the country, just to put it in perspective. But we've gotten this question so much that we've actually strategized in coming up with a set of videos on explaining and detailing what a town supervisor actually does. But generally speaking, I break it down Barney style, and I let them know that it's a cross between kind of being a mayor, which we are above, and a governor, which we're not quite, right? Because we have we're in unique positions where there's villages, which are semi-autonomous or mostly autonomous, and then there's hamlets within our townships, which need to be governed fully by the town supervisor and all the different departments within it: sanitation, public works, the county clerk's office, comptrollers. So it's a large job that people don't quite fully understand the gravity and scope of a town supervisor.
Yeah, thanks for breaking it down, and also the great reference as a fellow father. I love you and you love me. Warnie is in the house. Now to a deeper question. Tell me about your why. You know, I think one of the things I love asking fellow candidates that have been on is like, why? I mean, this is just really hard. Like, hard for those of you that aren't candidates yet.
Yeah.
Hard thing to do. You got to really want it, and it really has to. I think it has to come from a deep passion and sense of purpose. So tell me a little bit about your why.
Yeah, no, I love to get in explaining my why, the journey on how I got to be sitting here in front of you today, right? Honestly, my wife and I were sick and tired of just shaking our fists at the TV and being frustrated what's going on federally and locally, reading the papers. So we got out and started volunteering. With local Dem clubs and different organizations. I've continued to volunteer with domestic violence organizations and veterans groups throughout my public service career, and I still do. But we were sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? We got up off the couch. We were done shaking our fists at the TV. So we started being active in our community politically, and I will just air quotes, one of the leaders of the Dem clubs found out and learned of my humble roots, right? Meaning Marine combat veteran, retired New York City police officer, former prosecutor, a career rooted in public service. And I hope people don't mind me sharing this part of the story. I was in a large room of people, and the leader of our Dems club, Larry, came up and did explain, there's a gentleman that wants to meet you. Jay Jacobs would like to meet you. And when I said, who's Jay Jacobs, right, everybody started laughing at me. And I was like, okay, no worries, because I'm a guy who's used to getting things done in real time with real people, real problems, right? Real problem solving in real time with real people, taking multidisciplinary approach, working with other governmental agencies, nonprofits, to solve real problems for real people. So I didn't know the players in this game. I did go meet with the chairman. He is supporting me 100%, and he just is very excited about the possibilities of our campaign. So that's kind of the journey on how I got to where I am right now. I'm a frustrated resident, seeing how bad and corrupt the waste, fraud, and abuse locally is just so frustrating, right? And again, it's not, if people took the time to take a 30,000-foot view on what's going on, in particular the town of Hempstead, they wouldn't care about Republican or Democrat. They wouldn't care about right or left. They would honestly focus on right and wrong. And what's going on in the town of Hempstead in particular is just wrong. The waste, fraud, and abuse is rampant, and we need to rein it in. 12% plus tax hikes, pay raises, be in the cloak of darkness, and appointments to people who have never been elected we stopped, and we'll get into that in a minute. We stopped an appointment of my opponent because this was the current bad, corrupt practices of the past. And it's just, that's the type of stuff that gets me out of bed every morning and allows me to sacrifice my time with my family, my friends, for the good of all the people, not just the good of the political insiders. And I'm just sick and tired of what's going on, and I want real change in the town of Hempstead.
So I chuckled when you mentioned Jay Jacobs, because Jay has been on the show, and he also was the original, the episode 1 of The Candidate. I talked about my meeting with him, and it was the first time in a long time in my career. I've spoken in front of 17,000 people, but sitting in Jay's office with pictures of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Barack Obama, I was like, whoa, I felt really intimidated. It was really scary, honestly. But you've been through that now, and you're on the other side. You're in the campaign. What's the hardest part about the campaign so far, would you say?
For me, honestly, being a father and a husband, the sacrifice with the family time, right? So one of the things, before even going into this process, my family and I, we do weekly check-ins. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son, but the adults in my house, my teenage daughter and myself, we do weekly check-ins. And in the beginning of this process, I was very honest. I'm like, this is a scary process. This is something new. This is an unknown. Change is difficult, and there's going to be substantial change going into this endeavor. So we've continued with those weekly check-ins to make sure we're all in touch with what's going on. And one of the biggest challenges has been the family time. I'm used to prioritizing and making sure I'm around at every family event. But now I'm having to make certain sacrifices for the town of Hempstead and all the residents in the largest township in this country to make sure that we have proper leadership. And my family has been the biggest support, but that even though they're the biggest support and they're behind me 120%, for me personally is, the time away from my family right now. Yeah, no, it's brutal, and time is the only thing that we all have an equal amount of time for, and it's a constant battle to prioritize. I am a ruthless prioritizer of time, which is why my only call today on my wedding anniversary is with you for the podcast, for you guys, the listeners and the viewers, because I want to introduce you to Joe, and we had to reschedule you earlier, so I'm glad we got to get this in. Let's talk about what I think is an elephant in the room. We're both Democrats, both running as Democrats at a time where Long Island is red. I mean, it's as red. I'm gonna
It's as red as this chair right now. How does that make the is it easier or harder, do you think, to run at a time where we're both, we're Democrats, but we're this area that used to be pretty blue has gotten pretty darn red?
It's a bit of both, right? Not to give you like the lawyer answer, but it's both, because we are in a historically red district, and Nassau County, Long Island in particular, and for the town of Hempstead in particular. And I'm curious, Dave, to see what it was like for the supervisor seat by you. But there's only been, over 120 years, there's only been one Democrat that's ever held the seat that I'm running for.
Wow.
But on the other hand, I think that people are frustrated, right? Republicans and Democrats, again, given my resume and given my history, most of my friends are predominantly Republicans. So I'm engaging and conversing with Republicans all the time. I actually have a baker's dozen, which is over 12, friends that have requested lawn signs that say Republicans for Joe, because for them who hear the message and understand that, I'm a Democrat, I am for the working people, I am for middle America, and for those who have been the most vulnerable among us, and the voices that have been muted in the past. But I'm also somebody who doesn't accept waste, fraud, and abuse in our government, especially at the most local level. I'm also somebody who doesn't appreciate this party line politics stuff, because it's so much more than that, especially in Nassau County, where we have career politicians making sure they take care of themselves before they take care of the people. And that's what I'm sick and tired of. We need and all deserve and should be demanding a government that represents all the people, red and blue, purple, not just the political insiders. And that's what's happening right now. So I say it's good and bad. What's good about it is that there's a bipartisan support for our campaign in particular, because they're just sick and tired of being sick and tired of the status quo. And we're done with that now. So, and there's a Marine combat veteran, retired New York City police officer, and a former prosecutor running as a Democrat to lead this town in the right direction.
Yeah. I cannot believe there's only been one Democratic town supervisor. That's insane, and even more impressive that you're running, Joe. How long ago was that?
For what? The other town supervisor?
The last Democrat.
It was Laura Gillen. So that brings me to my next point. Yeah.
It was Laura, not too long ago then, so that's good.
2017. So we're also seeing a political climate that is much like when she ran for both of us. People are frustrated with the right. People are frustrated with the policies from the right, especially with this ugly big bill that just passed, which affects the most vulnerable among us, but gives the biggest benefits to those who have the most among us, right? Again, muting the voice of the people, not hearing what the majority of us are looking for in governance, kind of helps us out in our campaign too. I refer to it as the Trump trickle-down effect. And that's why we're getting bipartisan support from Republicans, that they're reaching out to us to voice their concerns too.
Yeah, I've had former town supervisor John Kamen on the show, and become friends with Judy Bosworth, who was another town supervisor in North Hempstead. And one of her quotes that I like to quote when talking about the political climate and the town supervisor role is that nobody cares whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in charge of cleaning up your garbage. They just want to make sure somebody's cleaning up your garbage and fixing your sidewalks and taking care of your buildings and helping you get permits quickly. Like in local government, as far as I can see, at least, people care about getting things done, and they care about how much money they're going to have to spend. And so that's why part of my platform is about creating efficiency. And yeah, I'm a Democrat, but yeah, I'm also going to cut taxes. Like, I can do both. and I come about it from an entrepreneurial and business angle. So I love that you're going after the fraud and the abuse and the corruption that's in government. And I personally, I'm not a politician. I've never run for anything before. This is, I'm an entrepreneur and an author that wants to make a difference in my community. You're a fighter. You've literally, been a cop and a Marine, and you're looking to help your town.
No, absolutely. And you touched on something like the waste, fraud, and abuse. And I am a candidate. We're not elected officials. I'm not a politician, but we're doing stuff without even being elected. We stopped an appointment. 6 out of the last 10 supervisors in the town of Hempstead were selected, not elected, prior to any vote being cast. That's just wrong, right? You're muting the voice of the people. It's the status quo. It costs taxpayers money on top of that. And in the town of Hempstead, we want to hand the reins over to the status quo in the town of Hempstead, the Republicans, the political insiders. We're getting over a 12% tax increase in this town. For what? And then they want to select, not elect, the next supervisor, my opponent. We stop them from doing that. We shed light on this issue. We showed the people how it actually is going to cost them even more money by going through this corrupt backdoor process. Imagine this. We're the largest township in the country, and they were planning on appointing my opponent prior to any vote being cast. He's not even in the council. There's a town code that says the deputy supervisor shall act as interim supervisor. Mind you, 6 out of the last 10 supervisors were appointed. I mean, the corruption has to just stop. And it costs taxpayers money every time they do something like this. Not to mention, you're taking somebody who was never elected to the town board, the council of men and women that are already there, and you're pulling somebody in from outside of it who was never elected by the people. It just is not, it doesn't pass the straight face test, and it just has to stop. And we stopped it this time. Doesn't mean that they're not trying to plan to do it later on down the road prior to the election, but we're not going to let up on this, and we're going to stop the bad practices of the past.
Yeah. Great work on stopping that, by the way. I got to ask before we head towards wrapping up. I mean, you served in Iraq, you served in the Marines. It's just so amazing. I'm thank you for your service. What is one thing you learned about leadership or life, in serving out there?
There's many different leadership styles just in general, and I bring this up, especially people ask me all the time if and when I am elected. So when I do become supervisor, I'm going to have to work with, a board that's predominantly Republican. I bring up a story when I was in Iraq. We had a sand table out, and we were working on a communications plan for a retrans site, meaning we just needed to talk to different people for one of the combat operations we were doing. And leadership and I, we were not on the same page in regards to the comm plan, and we needed to get this done. So one of the things I did was I brought in the lowest people on the totem pole, those who were going to be executing this mission, and I made them part of this comm plan. Not only did we not use the plan that I came up with, nor did we use the plan that the other leadership and I were conflicting on. We came up with the best possible plan altogether because we incorporated those at the bottom of our totem pole to be part of this process. That being said, I think it's important as a leader, in particular for the town of Hempstead, being the next supervisor, not to go in like a bull in a china shop, right? Progress is painfully slow. It's meant to be that way. And getting something done instead of nothing is going to be my mission, right? Cool. And we're going to have to work with the board. I've started speaking with some of the members of the board already, trying to lay the foundation, letting them know who I am, what I'm about, and learning who they are and what they're about. So we've been working on laying a foundation so when we do get elected, we can hit the ground running and start working with the other leaders on the board.
Cool. Quick speed round before we wrap. Who do you call for advice, Joe, when you need advice?
Well, first person's my wife. My wife is one of the most spectacular human beings anybody could ever meet. She is the most caring, kind, empathetic person I've ever had the fortunate opportunity to be a part of. And I know that it's your anniversary. For me, I have the best partner in life anybody could ask for, and man, she just makes me smile when I think of her. That's all.
Good. Now, with a gentle reminder, this is the speed round, Joe. The most underrated power player in New York politics.
Most Underrated power player in New York politics. Huh. I've never thought about that. I don't know the answer at this time.
All right, you're going to get back to me.
Oh.
And finally, complete the sentence. Politics would be better if...
If it was more representative of the people and not career politicians.
Love it. Joe Scianablo, thank you for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe is running for Town Supervisor, which, as he said, is kind of a cross between mayor and governor of the town of Hempstead, the largest township in the country. And I thank you in advance for supporting Joe, and as always, for subscribing, leaving a review, sharing this podcast if you like what you're hearing. And until next time, this is Dave Kerpen, and you're listening to The Candidate.
Paid for by the Friends of Dave Kerpen.
Thanks for going behind the scenes with us on The Candidate. If you enjoyed getting the real story about running for office, take a moment to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us. See you next time.